For generations, Caowangba had lived with the same cruel math. Steep karst cliffs above, thirsty fields below, and water somewhere on the wrong side of stone. In dry years, one village well could fail. Corn harvests could shrink to a few months of food, and rice became something people saved for celebrations. This was not dramatic scenery. It was infrastructure refusing to exist, which is a very polite way of saying the mountain was winning.
Huang was a farmer and village leader, raised in the same hard place, and by the late 1950s, he had made a promise that sounded almost rude to geography. He wanted to bring water, build a road, and get electricity for the village, because apparently choosing only one impossible task felt inefficient. The nearest reliable water was not impossibly far, but there was a mountain between it and Caowangba, and mountains are famously bad at moving out of concern. In the 1960s, inspired by China's Red Flag Canal, Huang led villagers into their first attempt to carve a water channel through the hills. They had little training, little equipment, and a measuring system that leaned heavily on bamboo poles, eyesight, and the ancient engineering method of please let this work. For more than 10 years, they dug, blasted, hauled, patched, argued with rock, and spent strength their village could barely spare. Then came the sentence every exhausted builder fears. The tunnel existed, but the water did not flow. The failure was not small. It was a decade of sweat turning into a useful footpath and a very expensive lesson in water conservancy. Some villagers decided the canal dream had already been tried and buried, which is understandable when your first miracle project becomes a scenic shortcut. Huang did not quit. He studied water management, visited other projects, asked questions, and taught himself the technical language he had missed the first time.
By his 50s, while many people would reasonably choose fewer cliffs in their schedule, he was preparing to ask the village to try again. In the winter of 1990, he walked about 100 kilometers to Zunyi, looking for support from water officials, because the mountain had not answered his letters. Officials eventually offered help, but they also needed the villagers to prove commitment, because even desperate villages are apparently expected to arrive with a deposit. Raising money in a poor mountain village was brutal, and some people refused, certain that the second attempt would only manufacture a better failure. But enough people believed, or at least believed in Huang, and in the spring of 1992, the canal project began again. This time, the work was organized like a small army. Crews drilled grooves into cliffs, while others carried earth, cement, food, tools, and the day's remaining courage. The planned canal had to cross 3 mountains, 3 precipices, and 3 cliffs, which is the sort of route only a desperate village and a stubborn man would approve. At the most dangerous section, villagers faced a cliff hundreds of meters high, and Huang was the first to tie a rope around his waist and go over the edge. He later said that if he did not go first, nobody else would dare, which is leadership in its least comfortable and most literal form. Workers sometimes slept in caves on the cliff, then woke up and continued carving water's future into a wall that clearly had other plans. They used hand tools, explosives, baskets, mud, cement, calloused hands, and an amount of trust that no blueprint can properly show. Day after day, the groove stretched farther across the mountainside, a thin, clay-colored line scratched into cliffs that had ignored people for generations. Every meter mattered, because this was not about building a monument. It was about a mother filling a bucket, a farmer flooding a field, and a child eating rice more than once a year.
By 1995, after 36 years of attempts, study, persuasion, failure, and work, the canal finally began carrying water into Caowangba. The finished system included a main canal of about 7.2 kilometers, plus roughly 2.2 kilometers of branches, a life canal cut along karst mountains. When the water arrived, villagers crowded around it, applauded, set off firecrackers, and watched a sound their ancestors had waited for become real. Huang was asked to speak, but for a long moment he could not, because sometimes the best speech is a man realizing the impossible has wet edges. The canal changed what the village could grow, helping rice fields, livestock, and later incomes rise in a place that had been trapped by thirst. Villagers named it the Dafa Canal, though Huang kept treating it less like a trophy and more like a child that still needed cleaning. Even in old age, he was known for patrolling the channel, clearing silt and patching leaks, because apparently retirement was also waiting behind the mountain. In 2021, Huang received national recognition, but the more important medal was already running through the village in a channel of clear water. His story is not really about one man defeating a mountain. It is about what happens when a promise keeps showing up longer than doubt, which may be the most oddly human kind of engineering. Tiny hands, stubborn math, and geography finally losing an argument it never agreed to have.